Commander Lee Hana wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the glowing screens around her. The small monitoring station felt even smaller today, floating alone in the darkness around the distant planet Kepler 442b. She had been watching the stars for 3 years looking for signs of trouble. Today she found more trouble than she ever wanted to see. The message came through the quantum relay like a lightning bolt. Her hands shook as she read the words on her screen. The Valthian Empire had made their decision about humanity. They called humans an existential threat to galactic order. The words made her stomach twist with fear. Hana knew about the Valthians. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were tall gray creatures with 4 arms and cold calculating minds. In just 10 years they had conquered 17 different star systems. Entire civilizations had fallen before their massive fleets. Now they had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. The reason was simple and terrifying. Earth's technology had grown too fast. In just 50 years, humans had gone from flying in primitive rockets to building ships that could travel faster than light. The Valthians saw this rapid growth as a threat. They believed humans would become too powerful if left alone. Captain Park Jin-ho's voice suddenly filled the control room through the communication system. He was calling from the research ship called Eternal Dawn, the only human vessel in this part of space. His voice sounded worried and tired. "Commander Hana, you need to see this," Jin-ho said. "Our long-range sensors are picking up something big, really big. It looks like hyperspace distortions, but the scale is unlike anything we've ever recorded." Hana's fingers moved quickly across her control panel, bringing up the sensor data from Jin-ho's ship. What she saw made her heart stop beating for a moment. The tactical display showed a massive formation of ships moving through hyperspace. She counted them twice, then 3 times, hoping she had made a mistake. She had not. 10,000 Valthian warships were heading toward Earth. The alien fleet was using hyperspace corridors that would take them around all of humanity's defense stations. They had planned this attack carefully. The ships would emerge from hyperspace at a place called the Nexus Point in exactly 72 hours. From there, it would take them only 6 more hours to reach Earth. Hana did the math in her head. 8 billion people lived on Earth. The planet had some defenses, but nothing that could stop 10,000 warships. It would be a massacre. "Commander," Jin-ho's voice came through the speaker again. "I just received new orders from Earth Command. All human ships are ordered to retreat to the inner colonies immediately. They're calling it a strategic withdrawal." Hana closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She understood what those words really meant. Earth Command knew they could not win this fight. They were abandoning Earth to save what they could of humanity's other colonies. It was a smart military decision, but it meant leaving 8 billion people to die. She looked at her tactical display again. The Eternal Dawn was just a research vessel, not a warship. It had been built to study stars and planets, not to fight battles. The ship had some basic weapons for dealing with space debris and hostile wildlife, but nothing designed for real combat. But the Eternal Dawn was also the only human ship positioned to intercept the Valthian fleet at the Nexus Point. If someone could slow down the alien ships even for a few hours, it might give Earth time to prepare better defenses or evacuate some of the population. Hana knew it was probably a suicide mission. One research ship against 10,000 warships was not a fair fight. It was not even close to a fair fight. But sometimes unfair fights were the only fights worth having. "Captain Park," she said quietly into her microphone, "prepare the Eternal Dawn for combat operations." There was a long silence before Jin-ho replied. "Commander, with all due respect, we can't possibly fight that many ships. Our weapons are designed for research, not warfare. We would be destroyed in minutes." Hana understood his fear. She felt the same fear herself, but she also felt something else growing inside her chest. It was determination mixed with anger. The Valthians thought they could simply wipe out humanity because humans had grown too quickly. They thought humans were just another weak species to be conquered. "Captain, I know the odds," Hana said. "But if we retreat now, there won't be anything left to retreat to. Those ships will reach Earth and 8 billion people will die. I can't live with that. Can you?" Another long silence filled the communication channel. Finally, Jinho's voice came back, stronger now. "No, Commander. I can't live with that either. What are your orders?" Hana smiled for the first time in hours. "We're going to show the Valthians that humans don't give up easily. Even when the odds are impossible." The space around the nexus point suddenly filled with light as 10,000 alien ships appeared from hyperspace. They came out of the twisted corridors between dimensions like ghosts becoming solid, their crystalline hulls catching starlight and throwing it back in cold, beautiful patterns. The Velthian fleet stretched across the darkness like a city made of metal and glass, each ship large enough to hold 1,000,000 beings. Admiral Kethron stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the largest vessel in the entire armada. He was 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 powerful arms. His species had conquered worlds for 1,000 years, and he had personally led the destruction of 6 different civilizations. Today would be his greatest victory. The Admiral's 4 eyes studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. Every ship was exactly where it should be. Every weapon system was charged and ready. The formation was perfect, just as Velthian military doctrine demanded. They would sweep toward Earth like an unstoppable wave and end the human threat forever. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, her voice confused, "our sensors are detecting a single human vessel at the nexus point." Kethron's eyes narrowed as he looked at the display. One tiny dot appeared on the screen, so small it was barely visible against the massive formation of his fleet. "One ship?" he asked. "Are you certain our sensors are working correctly?" "Yes, Admiral. One vessel, approximately 300 meters long. It appears to be a research ship, not a warship." The Admiral made a noise that sounded like laughter. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything so foolish. One small research ship was trying to block the path of 10,000 warships. It was almost insulting. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Commander Lee Hana watched the alien fleet emerge from hyperspace with calm determination. The sight should have terrified her. The enemy ships stretched as far as her sensors could detect, a wall of destruction that could wipe out entire solar systems. But Hana felt no fear. She felt only cold, focused anger. Captain Park Jinho sat beside her, his hands gripping the arms of his command chair so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "Commander," he whispered. "There are so many of them." "I can see that, Captain," Hana replied quietly. Her voice was steady, but her crew could hear the steel beneath her words. "Lieutenant Kim, open communication channels on all frequencies." Lieutenant Kim Daeho, the youngest member of their crew, worked quickly at his station. His hands shook slightly as he prepared to broadcast their message to the enormous alien fleet. "Channels open, Commander." Hana stood up and activated the transmitter. Her voice carried across space to every ship in the Valthian armada. "Valthian fleet, this is Commander Lee Hana of the Earth Defense Force. You are approaching human territory. Turn back now, or face the consequences." The response came back within seconds, translated by the ship's artificial intelligence system. The alien voice was cold and mechanical, without any emotion. "Insignificant human, your species will be eradicated for the good of the galaxy. You have advanced too quickly and become a threat to galactic stability. Stand aside or be destroyed, with the rest of your kind." Admiral Kethron expected the human ship to flee after hearing those words. Every other species had run when faced with Valthian might. But the small vessel did not move. It remained exactly where it was, blocking the path to Earth. Hana smiled. But it was not a happy smile. It was the cold smile of a predator preparing to hunt. She had spent 3 years studying every piece of information humanity had gathered about the Valthians. She knew their military tactics, their social structure, and most importantly, their weaknesses. The Valthians were proud and disciplined, but their rigid hierarchy made them predictable. They always followed the same battle patterns, always, used the same formations. They believed their way of fighting was perfect, so they never changed it. That arrogance would be their downfall. "All hands prepare for combat," Hana announced over the ship's communication system. Her voice reached every member of the crew. We're about to show them what one human can do when pushed too far. The alien fleet began to move forward, but slowly and carefully, maintaining their perfect formation. The first wave of Vaelthian fighters launched from the larger ships like a swarm of deadly metal insects. There were thousands of them, each one armed with weapons that could destroy a building with a single shot. Captain Park expected Hana to order a retreat. The smart thing to do would be to run, to try to get back to Earth and warn them of the coming attack. But Hana had no intention of running. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Set course directly for the center of their formation." "Commander," Jinho gasped, "that's suicide." "No, Captain," Hana replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "That's war." The Eternal Dawn suddenly accelerated, its experimental quantum drive pushing the ship faster than any Vaelthian vessel could match. Instead of fleeing from the approaching fighters, the small human ship charged directly toward them, diving into the heart of the alien formation like a missile aimed at the enemy's center. Captain Park Jinho watched in amazement as Commander Lee Hana flew the Eternal Dawn through the massive alien fleet. The ship moved like a bird dancing through a storm, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible. The experimental quantum drive that powered their vessel allowed them to make sharp turns and sudden stops that no normal spaceship could manage. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Thousands of alien fighters swarmed around them, firing their weapons and trying to destroy the small human ship. But Hana kept the Eternal Dawn moving, sliding between enemy vessels with perfect timing. Every few seconds, she would fire their weapons at exactly the right moment, hitting critical targets with deadly accuracy. "Target their command ships first," Hana ordered, her voice completely calm even though explosions were going off all around them. "We need to disrupt their chain of command." The Eternal Dawn had not been built as a warship. Its weapons were originally designed for breaking apart asteroids during mining operations. But these mining lasers were incredibly powerful, and when they hit the crystalline hulls of the Vaelthian fighters, the results were devastating. Each shot created cracks that spread through the alien ships like spider webs, causing entire sections to break apart. What made Hana's attack so effective was not just the power of her weapons, but where she aimed them. She did not waste shots on random targets. Instead, she focused on the command ships that controlled groups of fighters. When these command vessels were destroyed, the other ships in their formation became confused and disorganized. On the bridge of the alien flagship, Admiral Kethron watched his perfect fleet falling into chaos. His four hands gripped the command rail so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "How is one primitive vessel causing such damage?" he demanded. His tactical aide studied the battle data with growing concern. "Admiral, the human pilot seems to understand our formation patterns. They are targeting our command structure deliberately. Every ship they destroy creates maximum disruption to our battle plans." The Admiral's four eyes blazed with fury. "Our 1,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever made his forces look so foolish. The human ship was like a tiny insect buzzing around a giant, but somehow that insect was winning." Commander Hana had indeed spent years studying every piece of information about Vaelthian military tactics. She knew they relied on overwhelming numbers and rigid discipline to win their battles. Their formations were mathematically perfect, but that perfection was also their weakness. Because they always fought the same way, their enemies could predict what they would do. By attacking the command ships, Hana was breaking the chain of orders that held the alien formation together. Without clear commands from their leaders, individual Vaelthian pilots became uncertain and made mistakes. Their perfect coordination began to fall apart. The battle continued for 6 long hours. The Eternal Dawn moved through space like a ghost, appearing suddenly to attack and then vanishing before the enemy could respond. Hana used every trick she could think of. She hid the ship behind asteroids, using the floating rocks as shields. She flew close to the local star, using its radiation to blind enemy sensors. She even used the gravity of nearby planets to slingshot her ship in unexpected directions. Throughout the galaxy, other species watched the battle through their quantum communication networks. The news spread quickly from world to world. "Lieutenant, Kim Dae-ho intercepted dozens of transmissions as he monitored alien communication channels. The human fights alone against impossible odds, came one message from a distant planet. One ship holds back 10,000, said another. Perhaps there is hope after all, whispered a third. The story of the lone human ship became a symbol of resistance for oppressed species everywhere. For the first time in years, beings across the galaxy began to believe that the Valthians could be defeated, but the Eternal Dawn was paying a terrible price for its brave stand. The ship's hull was covered with scorch marks and holes where enemy weapons had found their target. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. Life support systems struggled to keep the crew alive as more and more systems failed. Commander Hana's uniform was torn and stained with blood from a dozen small wounds. Her face was pale from exhaustion and pain, but her eyes remained sharp and focused on the tactical display. She had been fighting continuously for 6 hours, making split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. Captain Park Jin-ho looked at the damage reports scrolling across his screen. The ship was dying around them, held together by emergency repairs and sheer determination. "Commander," he said quietly, "we can't keep this up much longer. The ship is falling apart." Hana nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the tactical display that showed the positions of the remaining enemy ships. She had destroyed or damaged nearly 1,000 alien vessels, but there were still thousands more. The Eternal Dawn had fought brilliantly, but even the best fighter cannot win against impossible odds forever. "Then we make our final move count," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. She began studying the positions of the enemy ships, looking for one last opportunity to strike a blow that would be remembered forever. 20 hours of fighting had changed everything. What started as Admiral Kethron's perfect war fleet was now a mess of confused and angry ships scattered across space. Over 1,000 Valthian vessels floated dead in the darkness, their crystalline hulls cracked and broken. The Admiral could not believe that one small human ship had caused so much damage to his mighty armada. The humiliation burned in Kethron's chest like acid. For 1,000 years, his people had conquered every enemy they faced. No species had ever made the Valthians look weak or foolish. But this human had done exactly that, dancing through his fleet like it was nothing more than floating debris. The Admiral made a decision that went against all military wisdom. He left his safe position at the back of the fleet and took personal command of the front attack ships. His honor demanded that he destroy this human himself. He would not let anyone else have that victory. Commander Lee Hana could barely keep her eyes open. She had been fighting without rest for 20 hours, living on nothing but combat drugs that kept her mind sharp while her body slowly failed. Her uniform was soaked with blood from dozens of small wounds. Every breath hurt, and her hands shook as they moved across the control panels. The Eternal Dawn was dying around her. Smoke filled the bridge from burning circuits. Half the lights had gone out and the others flickered weakly. The ship's hull was more whole than metal now, held together by emergency patches and desperate repairs. Warning alarms had been screaming for hours until the crew finally turned them off. Most dangerous of all was the quantum drive that powered their ship. The experimental engine had been pushed far beyond its design limits. The containment field that held the incredible energies inside was failing. If it collapsed completely, the explosion would destroy everything within 100 kilometers. Hana looked at the tactical display and saw the remaining Valthian ships closing in on her position. There were still thousands of them, all focusing their attack on her single vessel. She had fought well, but even the best warrior could not win against such impossible odds forever. "All crew to escape pods," she ordered, her voice hoarse from hours of shouting commands over the noise of battle. Captain Park Jin-ho, who had stayed by her side through the entire fight, shook his head firmly. "We're not leaving you, Commander. We started this together, and we'll finish it together." "That's an order, Captain," Hana replied, putting all the authority she could manage into her weak voice. "Someone needs to survive to tell Earth what happened here. Someone needs to warn them that more Valthian fleets might come." Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho, the young communications officer who had broadcast their first challenge to the alien fleet, spoke with tears in his eyes. "It's been an honor serving with you, Commander. The galaxy will remember what you did here." One by one, her loyal crew members left their stations and headed for the escape pods. Captain Jinho was the last to go, stopping at the bridge door to look back at Hana one final time. "Give them hell, Commander," he whispered, then disappeared down the corridor. Alone on the bridge of the dying ship, Hana looked out at the stars and made her final plan. The local solar system was dominated by a massive red giant star, much larger than Earth's sun but much less stable. The star's outer layers constantly shifted and moved, sending out bursts of deadly radiation. Hana set course directly for the red giant. The Eternal Dawn limped through space, its damaged engines leaving a trail of sparks and debris. Behind her, the entire remaining Vaelthian fleet followed like a pack of hungry wolves chasing wounded prey. Admiral Kethron saw the human ship heading for the star and assumed the pilot was trying to hide in the radiation field. "Follow them," he ordered. "Don't let them escape. I want that ship destroyed." Thousands of alien warships converged on Hana's position, forming a perfect sphere around the dying human vessel. They were so focused on their revenge that they did not notice how close they had come to the unstable star. Hana waited until the enemy ships were exactly where she wanted them. Then she accessed the quantum drive's control system and began the self-destruct sequence. The failing containment field would collapse in 30 seconds, creating an explosion equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. But Hana had calculated something the Vaelthians had not considered. The quantum drive explosion would not just destroy the Eternal Dawn, it would also destabilize the outer corona of the red giant star, triggering a massive solar flare that would sweep across the entire system. The explosion began as a tiny point of light brighter than 1,000 suns. The Eternal Dawn vanished instantly, vaporized by energies that could power entire civilizations. But the destruction was just beginning. The solar flare erupted from the red giant like a tsunami of electromagnetic energy. It raced across space at the speed of light, washing over the Vaelthian fleet before they could react. The pulse of energy overloaded their crystalline technology, causing ship after ship to go dark and powerless. In her final moments, as the nuclear fire consumed everything around her, Commander Lee Hana smiled. The alien invasion fleet was crippled and drifting helplessly through space. Earth was safe. Her sacrifice had saved 8 billion lives. The legend of the human who stood alone against 10,000 ships had just begun. 1 year had passed since the Battle of the Nexus Point, and the entire galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The mighty Vaelthian Empire, which had conquered 17 star systems and ruled with an iron fist for centuries, no longer existed. Their great war machine lay in ruins, broken by the actions of a single human woman who refused to surrender. The collapse began immediately after the battle, when news spread that one small research ship had crippled 10,000 Vaelthian warships. Oppressed worlds across the galaxy saw their chance for freedom. Planet after planet rose in rebellion, inspired by Commander Lee Hana's impossible stand against overwhelming odds. The Vaelthians, who had seemed unstoppable for so long, suddenly appeared weak and vulnerable. Their military leaders argued among themselves about who was to blame for the disaster. Some wanted to rebuild their fleet and attack Earth directly. Others insisted they should focus on putting down the rebellions in their own territory. The arguments turned into fights, and the fights turned into civil war. Captain Park Jinho, who had served as Hana's second-in-command during that terrible battle, now wore the uniform of an admiral. He stood on the observation deck of the newly built memorial station, watching the red giant star that had been the site of humanity's greatest victory. The star continued to burn steadily, showing no sign of the massive solar flare that had changed galactic history. The memorial station was beautiful in its simplicity. It was built from white metal and crystal, designed to last for thousands of years. The structure orbited the red giant at a safe distance, positioned exactly where Commander Hana had made her final sacrifice. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Dae-ho, who had been the young communications officer on the Eternal Dawn, approached Admiral Park with a data pad in his hands. "Sir, the inscription is complete," he reported. "We've translated it into 247 different languages. just as Commander Hana would have wanted. Park nodded and walked to the memorial's central chamber. There, carved into a wall of polished black stone, were the words that would be remembered for generations. Here stood Commander Lee Hana, who proved that courage knows no limits. Her sacrifice saved not just humanity, but hope itself. The words were simple, but they carried enormous weight. Below the inscription were the names of every crew member who had served on the Eternal Dawn, honoring not just the commander, but everyone who had taken part in the impossible battle. Earth had become one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy almost overnight. Species that had once viewed humans as primitive newcomers now sought them out as allies. The phrase "Remember Hana" had spread to every corner of known space, becoming a symbol of resistance against tyranny and oppression. Children on distant worlds who had never seen a human still knew the story of the woman who stood alone against 10,000 ships. In the Great Council chambers on Earth, President Song Miran stood before representatives from 37 different species. The meeting was historic, the first time so many different civilizations had gathered in peace. Many of these beings had been enemies of each other for centuries, but Hana's sacrifice had shown them that cooperation was possible. "We gather here today not to celebrate war," President Song said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "but to honor the peace that one person's sacrifice made possible." Commander Lee Hana did not fight because she loved violence. She fought because she loved life, and she believed that all beings deserved the chance to live free from fear. The representatives listened in respectful silence. Among them were former Velthian officers who had defected from their collapsing empire, seeking refuge with the humans they had once planned to destroy. There were delegates from worlds that had been enslaved for generations, but were now free. All of them had been touched by the story of one human's courage. Across the galaxy, young beings told the story of Commander Hana in different ways. Some focused on her brilliant tactical moves, describing how she had turned the aliens' own formations against them. Others emphasized her final, heroic sacrifice, using the quantum drive explosion to save Earth. Still others talked about her determination to protect innocent people, even at the cost of her own life. But no matter how the story was told, the central message remained the same. When faced with impossible odds, when evil seemed too powerful to defeat, when hope appeared lost, humans would stand and fight. They would not surrender, they would not run away, and they would not abandon those who needed protection. The memorial station's quantum beacon pulsed once every minute, sending a message across the galaxy that could be received by any civilization with the technology to detect it. The message was simple but powerful. Here stood one human against 10,000, and the galaxy will never forget. Years would pass, and the details of the battle might fade from memory. But the legend would endure. Somewhere in the galaxy, whenever beings faced overwhelming odds, they would remember Commander Lee Hana and find the courage to keep fighting. Her sacrifice had saved more than just Earth. It had saved the idea that good could triumph over evil, that the weak could defeat the strong, and that one person's courage could change the fate of billions. The legend of the human who stood alone had been born, and it would never die.